Welcome back, everybody, and go blue. Questions. Is J.J. McCarthy's performance a cause for concern? And the return of Jim Harbaugh coming up next on Michigan Wolverines Live. And here we go. This is the 108th episode of Michigan Wolverines Live, Wednesday, September 20th. Quick reminder, please like, subscribe, share with a friend. If everybody posts this link out on social, shares with somebody, we can grow this thing so big, and we would love to do that, especially since we have our panel back. My name is John Diadamo. I'm going to be your host for the next hour and change. John Diadamo on Twitter. I want to keep the just hit the 1,000 mark for followers, so keep adding to that. We would really appreciate that. And then coming up here, we are going to bring on our panel. So we'll start with Nelson Hubble from Maize and Blue Review. Great to have you back, Nelson. Go Blue.
Yeah, thank you for having me back, John. A lot to talk about. So it was, I was at the game, and it was even just, it's different watching it in person versus watching it above, from the camera view on TV. But a lot to get into. I think I saw some stuff that I think was really interesting, and I'm looking to break down.
Absolutely. And joining us as well from Blue by 90, Tanner Wooten's in the house. Tanner, welcome back.
Hey man, I don't think you got our text about Flannel Day. We'll let it slide this time, but I know you look. I know you're a little further south. Yeah, I mean you're a little further south, and we're finally getting to that weather where I can throw on a flannel and not be just extremely hot. So best time of year, getting into fall and finally getting into Big Ten play.
Hey man, I miss it. I love Michigan in the fall. It's like football. 50 degrees. It's it's just classic
on fire.
So I do miss it.
It's the best.
There's nothing like it.
Absolutely. So we also later today, little bit of a scheduling thing, but we should be joined at some point today by Kristian Dyer from RutgersWire. So we're excited about that. Please remember to send a super chat if you want your comment or question to be read. We're going to be talking. We have a whole panel, lots of topics to cover. I'm going to try to get to people's comments, but no guarantees unless you send a super chat. That's the one guarantee that you will get on and get your question or comment read on air. So we did get to see Michigan in what I like to call the third preseason game, 31-6 against Bowling Green. And of course, what everybody's talking about is, JJ has two games that are, in my opinion, nearly perfect performances in terms of completion. Still has an 82% completion across all three games, but obviously did throw 3 interceptions. And so my question to the panel, and I'll start this time with Tanner, is cause for concern?
No, I think it was just more annoying than anything. I was at the stadium, you're just the first one. And I think it's been discussed on Twitter and, I listened to a lot of different podcasts and breakdowns. It seems like AJ Barner maybe took his guy a little too deep into the end zone where he was supposed to be a little more shallow for a clear out to get to Roman. JJ probably could have waited a half second on that throw. It would have been a touchdown to the back pylon. I think in a vacuum, you can look at each individual interception and, say this is all very coachable. And even when you put them all together and kind of the whole performance from him on Saturday, it is what it is, right? I mean, we've seen what J.J. McCarthy can be. He's not very turnover prone. This is his second career game with 2+ picks. Obviously, the other one was in the playoff game against TCU. So, yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate to kind of see some of those things rear their head a little bit. But I think watching those first 2 games, he just had such control of the offense. And it felt like he was pressing a lot, which you hadn't really seen from him. Even in that TCU game, I mean, poor throw, poor read. I mean, the one pick six was a deep out long throw, and the other one I don't think he saw the linebacker right. And so those are obviously mistakes, but it's not like he was really pressing. I think in this one he was trying to get it all back. He took a deep shot to CJ, which if he threw it to Roman on that second pick, it's probably a touchdown. And then the last one, hey man, just get it out of bounds, right? Like I understand you've got Colston Loveland there, let your 6'6" tight end make a play, but you're rolling, you're trying to throw across your body. Just throw it out of bounds, throw it up into the stands and move on, because it was only 2nd and 5. So, obviously not great, but I still feel the same about this team that I did, Saturday at 3:30 or whatever. Like they're still one of the best teams in the country, and I feel very confident that they'll get it figured out, especially with Harbaugh coming back this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, it's like, it did seem like he was sort of pressing a little bit at times. I think the first one was maybe more careless than anything. He just didn't, take that extra second, like you're talking about there, to make the right decision. But, the other two, and really I thought there actually could have been a fourth one. I thought that tip pass touchdown on the flea flicker to Cornelius Johnson, I thought that should have been intercepted. I think against a good team, it would have been a better DB probably would have picked that off. And would have had a better tracking on that ball. But that's not what happened. But I'm not concerned. No, I think, like you said, they're all things that are coachable. I also think that it's just sort of like a one-game instance. Like I don't think any of those issues are things that have been problems with him in the past or will be problems with him in the future, So I'm not concerned about it. But, it's the same reason Harbaugh talked about this, I guess. He talked about, in the first press conference, I think it was, or maybe it was on Big Ten Network when he got interviewed there, but he felt like the team had been trying to play too perfect, that they were working towards perfection, and it was holding them back a little bit. And I think that lends itself to what Tanner was saying about him pressing a little bit. But it's also the reason I left Michigan at number 1. Like Tanner said, I still feel like in my power rankings, I left them at number 1. Very, very hard to do, considering Penn State and Ohio State have played well. Especially Penn State really wanted to move them up there. They're my 2 and 3. But the reason I left them there is because I feel like they're the same team that they were before, and it doesn't change anything for me, and I don't think it'll be an issue going forward.
Yeah, Harbaugh said something in the presser yesterday where he said, JJ McCarthy is a gunslinger, and we don't want to change that because there's a risk of overcoaching. And I actually think maybe this was a slight nod to what happened last year, where they tried to turn JJ into more of a pocket passer, at least for the games that weren't like Penn State, Ohio State. If you remember, a lot of the games, it seemed like he was told not to run. And maybe that was to preserve, try to limit injury. But, JJ does have that kind of dynamic Patrick Mahomes-esque piece in him somewhere, and sometimes you see it. And so, yeah, I agree with Harbaugh. He if there's one position I trust him on more than any, it's quarterback, right? And so, his instincts I'm going to go with. I wouldn't want to change the way JJ is either, unless this becomes not just a one-off and it becomes a pattern against Rutgers, Nebraska. Then you might want to say, okay, it's time to course correct. But right now, not yet. And so, yeah, I just think we need to see, are we going to see more of what we saw the first 2 games, or more of this, and then kind of go from there?
Yeah, I think you're going to see what you saw in the first 2 games. Look, I'll come on here and let you know if I find that it's very concerning and this happens again. And, but and there's some comments in the chat right now about, game management and, he doesn't need to win the game. I disagree, because when you think about the teams that have won national championships with a game manager, Alabama, Georgia, they're much more talented than everybody else. Michigan is very talented, but I don't necessarily believe that they have that straight up talent edge over Georgia, over certain teams. So, I mean, he had to go win that Ohio State game last year, right? And obviously you can't go and play hero ball, which I agree with. But if Michigan wants to achieve its biggest goals, he's going to have to be let off the leash a little bit and be able to be a playmaker and make throws out of rhythm, outside the pocket. Now, look, Saturday was not great from his perspective in turning the ball over, but I don't think you want to turn him into Cade McNamara like he maybe was a little bit last year, right? If you want to beat Georgia, you have to have him be a difference maker in the passing game and in the running game. So I don't think just having him just sit in the pocket and throw it away when, things aren't open, like you got to let him be JJ. If you want to get this team to that next level and do what we all want it to do, he has to be a difference maker. So like you said, you don't want to overcoach it. You don't, you want to maybe overcoach the throw it out of bounds, buddy. Like you don't need to lob it up there. But hey, I mean, he was taking shots, and I think this was just a game where he pressed. I mean, I fully expect on Saturday he's going to come out and play very well. I think he's going to throw for at least a couple of touchdowns, no picks, very accurate, very efficient. Like I just feel like we're going to look back at this as a blip on the radar. And I think some people look, it's game 3, so there's only been 3 games, and one of them has been pretty rough. But I don't know. I just don't really buy into the sky is falling, which I've seen from quite a few Michigan fans sitting at number 2 in the country, which is just objectively hilarious. But you got to let JJ be JJ. And this is maybe part of the growing pains that come with it. Maybe we thought that he had, taken that step to elite. But at the end of the day, he's still, 3rd game in his junior year. And still got a lot to learn, a lot of room for growth. So I think this may be just part of that process.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, off the back of that a little bit. Harbaugh, he's coming back, right? Which we'll get into in a little, maybe this will be a good transition. But Harbaugh's coming back, right? And when you talk about him pressing, I mean, JJ's guy is Jim Harbaugh. Like that's the reason he's at Michigan. And that's his dude. So when you're missing that's like a blanket of comfort right there, that having him to, you go back to the sideline and your coach who you're super tight with can just sort of calm you down or just get you right, especially a former quarterback like Harbaugh, and a guy who's been doing it for so long and coaching as well. You're missing that. And I think that's maybe this wouldn't have happened. You might have thrown that first pick and he might not have thrown the other 2 had Harbaugh been on the sideline, just to sort of ease that tension a little bit.
Yeah, I will say one thing we talked about on Michigan Wolverines Live when I was with Mark is we discussed blue chip ratios, and so Tanner, when you talked about the fact that JJ is going to need to be a dynamic player, there were 3 teams since 2010 that have won the national championship with actually a lower blue chip ratio than Michigan has at 54. So it was Auburn 2010, it was at FSU 2013, and it was Clemson 2016. What do all 3 have in common?
Well, star quarterback.
Extremely elite quarterback play, next level quarterback play. So to your point, Tanner, that is the only path that Michigan has, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think Michigan is extremely talented. But when I was talking through that, like Deshaun Watson at Clemson came to mind, right? Like that was the reason they got over the hump, was because they had elite quarterback play, and they were more talented, and they had won a national championship in 2016. So the recruits started to pour in a little bit. But even in 2018, Trevor Lawrence was a difference maker with that team, be able to make a lot of big time throws. So that's where I look at Michigan as, hey, they've won the Big Ten the last 2 years. They've beat Ohio State. They've gone to the playoff. They haven't won, for various, whatever different reasons. Against Georgia, it was just they're way more physical, and they had some big dudes, and Michigan just couldn't really hang. And against TCU, obviously had some turnovers, had the fumble at the goal line, had the 4th and goal that they didn't get off the Philly special or whatever the heck they ran. So I think you will need JJ to be more than just a game manager. He's got to be more than what he was last year. They could probably still win the Big Ten. Look, they could probably still win the Big Ten, beat Ohio State if he does what he does last year, 22 touchdowns, 5 picks, whatever those stats are. But I think if you want to see Michigan achieve its biggest goal, he is going to have those that leash a little bit longer, because he's going to make some mistakes, but he's hopefully going to make up for some big time throws and plays that normally wouldn't be made.
So before we get to the running game, which I think there's definitely some things to talk about there, we do have our first super chat. Thank you to Bizzer. Always likes to come in here with the Brad Pitt. And in this case, it's Dion. I think this was Dion Sanders is the truth. Which, hey, did anyone think Colorado was going to triple their amount of wins already in the season? I sure didn't. So, hey, it's notable.
Yeah, I mean, what Deion's doing there, you know, he gets his love, he gets his hate, but you have to respect what he's doing. I mean, that is incredible to be able to turn around a program that quickly. I don't think any of the teams that he's played are actually particularly very good. So that's going to be an interesting component when they play Oregon this weekend.
Yeah.
But it's still some you're playing Power 5 level competition, Nebraska, TCU, and Colorado State's not a bad team. So
right. Any comments on Deion, Tanner? Tanner, before you
yeah, I mean, they should have lost that game, truthfully.
Yeah.
Colorado State outplayed them. They had no answer for the mesh concept. It felt like Michigan, Ohio State 2018. I think obviously beat a team that went to the national championship last year in week 1, win an in-state rivalry and, beat the brakes off Nebraska, sitting at 3-0. I don't know how much longer it's going to last, especially with Travis Hunter out, but I still just in the trenches. I just don't know if they are, built to, the Pac-12 is legit this year. Like it is there are a couple teams that I think could be playoff teams. I mean, I think Washington is one of the best teams in the country. Obviously USC with all their talent and Caleb Williams. Oregon's kind of quietly sitting there, I believe, right outside the top 10 or maybe just inside the top 10. So it's going to be, I don't know their exact schedule, but I know they've got Oregon this week. They play USC. So they've got quite a schedule.
Oregon
missed out on Washington, but yeah. So you got, a couple top 10 teams sitting on the schedule for you. So we're going to find out though. I mean, Shedeur is a stud. That game-winning drive was fantastic. So, look, I like Deion Sanders. I could go without though, like all the commercials somehow relating it back to Colorado. It's like, all right, there are 133 Division I teams. It's cool. I like Deion a lot, and I love what he's doing. But it's like, man, relax a little bit, please, maybe.
Yeah, it's personal, it's personal. Okay, well, does every single I think you're going to see a bit of a shift now that they're about to play the real the really tough teams. I think you're going to see a shift in mentality a little bit, a little less chirpiness. That's my guess. But anyway, so back to obviously the run game, has been a conversation that we've had for the last couple of weeks. And I do think that now Edwards has had a little bit more contribution. Obviously, Corum's still the feature back with 2 touchdowns. You did see that they rotated out Miles Hinton later in the game. They put Barnhart back at right tackle. They put Ladarius Henderson at left tackle, which is more in line with what we had predicted. We were actually, I think, pretty surprised that Miles Hinton was still at right tackle at this point in the season. So with that said, it did look like that both of our feature backs were showcased, Corum more so. We'll start with Nelson this time. What was kind of your take on the run game and what you saw?
Well, I think the number one thing that grabbed me was seeing Corum break out that 54-yard run. He's talked about he feels quicker and he feels faster, and really, I think he showed it. He didn't take that to the house, but he didn't have the angle there anyways, especially on a play like that where he had to bounce it outside after getting through the hole. So I honestly, I think it looks better, and I think that the Barnhart and Henderson tandem is what I wanted them to put out there in the first place. The thing I didn't understand was why it didn't happen until Saturday. And that's sort of the expectation that that's what's going to go out there against Rutgers, at least to start the game. That's the whispers. So we'll see how that plays out. But I think the run game's moving in the right direction. It looks pretty good. Michigan handed over a few possessions there with those interceptions. So maybe we see a little bit of a different score, and maybe the run game explodes a little bit more than that because they're able to not turn it over. Really, that's partly why JJ's stats are so mid, I guess. I mean, it was his worst game of his career, arguably. I would say so. So I think that has an effect on it all too. So the run game looked good overall against a not very good team, but Rutgers will be a stiff test against the run, so that will be interesting.
Yeah, I thought the run game looked better. I thought Blake looks like Blake. I mean, I kind of said that last week, but like he really feels like he's back. And I also saw a tweet from one of my boys, Parker, that he has this basically the same exact statistics through 3 games this year versus last year. I think he has 1 less touchdown. He has 6, and last year he had 7, but he also had 5 against UConn. So helping to puff the stats a little bit there. But yeah, I thought Donovan looked more decisive. Again, I really like what they're continuing to do with him. There was a really nice play, I think right after the big Blake run in the first drive, where it was a handoff to Blake and then he pitched it to Donovan on a little bit of a counter. I loved that play. So I like what they're doing, getting those guys involved. And I think real quick, just to touch on the O-line, I thought they looked better in the run game. Pass pro continues to give me a little bit of pause. It feels like they're just not communicating well. Like there was a couple times where McCarthy had pressure in his face, and it looked like it was just because they didn't communicate right, or maybe Donovan went out to run a route instead of blocking the linebacker coming up the middle. I think I noticed that once. So definitely some things to get shored up, and hopefully, with Sherman Moore not having 3 titles on his plate as head coach, offensive coordinator, and offensive line coach, that maybe that'll help. I don't know if that will, but yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see Ladarius Henderson. I liked what I saw from him Saturday, and I think we've seen Barnhart at right tackle after Trente Jones went down last year, so feel comfortable with him there. Still would prefer Trente just with his run blocking ability. Like he's a monster, and I don't know if he just can't pass pro, what the deal is, because he comes in as that 6-0 line and looks pretty good in the run game. So but yeah, overall O-line and the run game looked better. I thought the running backs looked pretty good too.
Yeah, I think that it's a good. I don't hate what it seems like they're going to do now, because with Ladarius on the left, Barnhart on the right, and then Trente coming in as that 6th. In my mind, they use 6-man personnel so much anyway that like I'm fine with that as long as we don't see Hinton anymore, unless it's like 4th quarter garbage time again and we're up by like 40 points. I don't want to see him anymore. Like I think we've seen enough. And we can go with Ladarius and Barnhart and then Trente as the 6th guy. That's fine. And by the way, if Trente does improve, there's always the possibility of flipping that situation around, and then those 2 could flip. So just I mean, I think it'll go through the season. And if one is looking better, you know how Harbaugh is, meritocracy. So
it's an interesting thing because I look at Hinton and I think of him as more left tackle. When I watch his footwork and I look at his size and his arm length, I mean, they're playing him at right, and maybe that's, the best. They would know, right? Clearly they know that's the best spot for him more than I would. But just like prototypically, he looks like a left tackle to me.
Yeah, Brian. Yeah, Donovan blew an outside blitz pickup. Yeah, there was one or 2 like that where he should have blocked.
There was one that came up I think it was the A-gap. It was right off the center or guard. I can't exactly remember, but it was right up the middle, and I think that might have been the sack that they took. So I don't know if that's JJ needed to tell Donovan, the O-line communicating back with Jay. Like I don't know. I mean, I don't know what that conversation looks like. Like we played in basically like a wing tee in high school, so I never really had those conversations when I was playing. So I have no idea kind of the level of who needs to know what in those scenarios, but. Yeah, definitely some things to clean up there, and hopefully they can get that short up going into the Rutgers game. Absolutely,
and we want to thank Nick because Nick likes to do the $9.99 super chats, and sometimes we'll make some digs at he calls it third base Ryan Day, so we always like to get the digs in there. That's always fun, and in this case. Would like to see the JJ Loveland connection a little more. If you're going to throw a 50-50 ball, Colston is that dude. I agree 1,000,000%. And use him as a safety blanket because his talent and ability can bail JJ out if need be. Yeah.
I mean, I agree with that. That's also, you don't want JJ to become too reliant on him as well, because that's where that interception came, right? Instead of the throwaway, which maybe he was trying to throw it away. I'm not sure but it looked like he was trying to get it to Loveland there. But nonetheless, I totally agree. I don't think there's a better jump ball receiver on this team. And Loveland can play. He doesn't have to play in the slot. He can play out wide. And get the mismatch with a corner on him and see what he can do and just use his size. So I'd be interested to see more of that connection for sure. But I think it also brings a good change of pace with Roman as the more of the speedster on the team.
Yeah, I thought they had a nice connection. I think it was after the second pick. It was the drive after the second pick, and he went to Loveland, had like a 25-yard gain, nice throw in between the zone coverages, and then the next play is when he hit Roman, which was a rope on kind of, I don't know, I can't remember exactly the route. I was on the other side of the end zone, and I've only rewatched the game maybe once, but it was a rope on a deep route to Roman from JJ. So I think we've seen a good amount of Loveland. I think this game, though, there's only 44 offensive plays. It was a weird game just all around. Like, there wasn't as many opportunities for guys to get the ball. They threw it 13 times and gave the ball to Bowling Green 4 times with the 3 picks and then the fumble on the kick return. So not a ton of opportunities to showcase. But I do think, Rutgers is pretty good against the run. So, maybe an opportunity for JJ to get out there and throw it around and gain some of that confidence back and involve some of these receivers in the passing game.
Yeah, one thing I did predict was going to happen, which we are seeing, Loveland in motion a lot. So Loveland's been in motion a lot in terms of play design, but they're using Barner and Bredesen, especially Bredesen, as a blocker. So it's kind of what I was thinking was going to happen. Loveland, they're trying to get him in motion. They're trying to get him used as a kind of a hybrid tight end wide receiver, and that's what they should be doing. I will say there's a couple of those motion ones that have looked a little weird in these first 3 games. There was one, I forget which first or second game, that was just like, it just didn't seem to work very well. I think they got to work on their timing a little bit there. But, I don't hate the idea of using him that way because, then obviously you can open up some real creativity in terms of RPOs and things like that. So, Nick, I'm with you. And thanks for your contribution. We really do appreciate that. Before we move on we'll start to talk about Rutgers. But obviously the defense, I do think was a highlight of this game. I would argue they bailed JJ out. They played really, really well. And who is continuing to impress me is Keon Sabb. 3 tackles, adds to his stats from the last 2 games. He's supposed to be a backup, but he's playing like a starter, and it's going to be interesting how they use, with Rod Moore when he comes back, how they rotate these players in and out. That'll be, I guess, Jesse Minner, will need to figure out the best configuration, but Keon Sabb is looking pretty good against, admittedly not the greatest competition, but, Nelson, what was your kind of take on the defense and Keon and just in general?
Yeah, I mean, so let's stick with Minner and Sabb in the secondary for a second. So Minner said this week, it was probably yesterday, but he talked about how they're almost at 100% in the secondary. He's like tentatively saying it, but hey, like I feel like we almost have everybody back, which means Moore is going to be back, Page is going to be back. That means Will Johnson's going to be back, and then you have Sabb with Stainridge still and Wallace, right? So those are your guys. Sabb's that third safety who you can bring in if you want to go 3 high or bring someone down into the box, like Page and put Sabb out, or whoever you're more comfortable in coverage with. So they have some versatility now. Seeing Sabb get this playing time will be huge against some of these more pass-heavy teams, especially in the playoff. You potentially get there, and let's say you face a Washington and Washington comes to the Pac-12 or USC, you're going to need to have a third safety. So that's important development early in the season. The rest of the defense looked really good. Stopped the run really well. The guy that I want to talk about a little bit is Jalen Harrell. He got another sack, and he continues to look good, very good. I think he's at 2.5 in the season now in 3 games, which is fine, decent. But seeing him play well is interesting to me because I did not expect him to come out as the better pass rusher thus far among the group. I thought that would be Moore and McGregor and Stewart, and I thought Harrell would be actually the sort of the odd man out in that group when it comes to third down situations. But he's been great. So I'd like to see some of those other guys get to the quarterback a little bit more, but when you're playing a team like Bowling Green, they're going to be as conservative as they can. They're going to keep their tight end maybe to chip and a running back to help pick up the blitzer. So we'll probably see bigger numbers from them the more you get into Big Ten play and the more teams are really forced into situations where they're actually going to throw. Because Bowling Green was committed to losing that game, in the second half. Once they went down, a couple scores, they knew they weren't getting back out of that hole, and they didn't really throw it around. And that's part of salvaging your some respect or maybe the egos of your players and not letting them get too beat down. But yeah.
Yeah, I thought the defense played well. I don't know the exact yardage on these two plays, but it felt like a lot of their passing yard and just total offense came from the first play of the game where, I don't know, they overturned it, but the ball came out at the end, and they called it incomplete on the field and then reversed it up in the booth. And then the other one, Mikey had played it really well, swatted it away, and then it just ends up in the receiver's hands as he's on his back. So, I think there were a couple things that were concerning from Braden McGregor for me, which is unfortunate because I really like his potential. If he ever puts it together, man, all the tools are there physically, all the traits.
Right.
But there was a couple times where he kind of got sucked in and he left just a huge gap that allowed Bowling Green to pick up a couple decent sized chunks. So other than that, though, another great game from the defensive tackles. Keon Sabb is certainly flashing. I think I saw Jalen Harrell has like a 25% pass rush win rate, which is just absurd. Is just an absurd number. The defense held their own. Chris Jenkins had a pick. Quentin Johnson had a really nice pick on the sideline. And then Harrell had the strip sack. So, really solid performance from them. And I know we'll talk about it here upcoming, but you think about this defense going up against Rutgers. Rutgers has a solid defense, but that offense is not very good. And I think Michigan's going to be able to get after it on Saturday with kind of a below average passer, but they do have a pretty good run game. So I'm excited to see them against a somewhat competent run game and see these defensive tackles at work. So, but yeah, I was overall pretty pleased. Nothing concerned me at all about that game on Saturday from a defensive perspective.
I agree. And if you want to look at the running game for Rutgers, they're Kyle Monangai, I believe I said that right. Kyle Monangai is their running back, and he leads the conference in rushing yards. He also leads it in carries by like 2, but he's second in touchdowns behind yours truly, Blake Corum. So he's got 5, and he's play much in that first game, or they didn't need him much against Northwestern. But I think that's going to be an interesting first step of a test defensively, like you're sort of talking about there, Tanner, before you go up and play some of these guys like, at Penn State or Ohio State who have backfields. Just whoever they want to throw at you is going to be really good, especially with Travion Henderson or Mayan Williams and Kate Trinell and Nick Singleton, among other teams. I like Noah Carter at Michigan State. So it'll be a good test for Michigan to get Monangai on Saturday against Rutgers.
Yep. So just to wrap here, and then we'll go into our sponsors and all that good stuff. But I'll ask you guys, who was the impact player? And now we'll have one that isn't JJ because of what happened. So I don't have to put except for JJ on this one. But who do you think was the impact player of the game for you, Nelson?
It feels easy, but it's got to be Blake Corum. It feels too easy, but I just think he played well. He looked great. It was his first 100-yard game, and he was efficient. And so, I think it's Blake. Defensively, too many guys played well that there's no one that to me stood out big time. But that's where I'm at.
I'll go Chris Jenkins. Had the pick, set up a short field. I was very annoyed in the stands at that point, knowing Michigan was not going to lose the game, but just ugh. And then he makes a great play. Great read, soft hands, almost for the big fella, a touchdown. Almost carries the guy in the end zone, but felt like he was pretty disruptive all day.
All right, and I'm gonna agree with Blake Corum. We can have the same one. It's okay.
I didn't want to,
but that's fair. But I'm going Blake Corum because of exactly what you said. Obviously, 100-yard game, multiple touchdowns. We want him. Like he chose to come back. He could have gone to the NFL, and I like when he does well. I mean, I think he's one of the leaders of the team in so many different ways, and so just to see him doing well is great to watch. So a couple of sponsors, couple of people, a couple of thank yous, all that good stuff. So obviously ticketsmarter.com. You're getting your tickets for football season. We have 2 promo codes you can use, BIG for $10 off a purchase of $100 or BIG20 for $20 off a purchase of $300. So support Voice of College Football, support Mark Rogers. Get your tickets at ticketsmarter.com. Don't forget that it's football season. And so get your free shipping at the Voice of College Football merch store, including the Michigan merch. So we have a whole bunch of amazing products that you can check out here at the merch store, whether it's for Voice of College Football in general, where you've got your T-shirts, your coffee mugs. Now it's in places like Ann Arbor, it's getting a little cooler. Maybe you want your hoodie, which Mike G., one of our Michigan Wolverine loyal friends here, loves the hoodie. And so, you've got a whole bunch of different things on the main site, and then you've got your Michigan gear. So we've got the T-shirt, we've got the pint glass, we've got the mug, we've got a hoodie, we've got a couple of different things for people. So check that out. Go to the merch store. We'll pop the link right in here. And if you haven't gotten your merch yet, we strongly recommend that. Our man Jason here has given us a few as well. So when you're doing your shopping on Amazon, which many of us do from time to time, just use the link in any description and get Mark Rogers a couple of bucks. Because really, what's wrong with that? That's what I always say. So with all that said, thank you for that, Jason, for putting these in here so people can just really easily click on the different ones. So we are on to Rutgers, and kind of to start off before we get into like specifics on the teams and what we were thinking. I just want to ask you guys a general question about Rutgers and what you're seeing so far from them. Is this potentially his best team in his second tenure? Because we know there was a team in the first tenure that was better, with a certain running back that lived in infamy. But in his second tenure, it might be an open question. So I'm going to start this time with Tanner. What do you think about this Greg Schiano team?
Yeah, I mean, they've looked pretty good this year, especially defensively. I still have question marks about their quarterback, Gavin Wimsatt, who was a big-time recruit coming out of high school, graduated early and joined the Rutgers team in 2021, even though he was a 2022 high school graduate. He graduated early. So, yeah, I mean, and they've given up 30 points, so they're giving up 10 points a game right now. I will say, though, look, they beat Northwestern. They beat Temple. They were favored by 8, but they beat Temple by 29, and then they beat Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is not like what we had when we were kind of growing up with Frank Beamer. Like, that program has fallen off a cliff. It's unfortunate. My brother-in-law is a senior there, and so I like to root for the Hokies, and man, they just are not good. So I don't know how much to take from this. I mean, they came into the Big House 2 years ago, 3-0. But they've got an opportunity to get to a bowl game. I definitely think they can beat Michigan State. They can beat Indiana. They've got a game against Wagner. Like that's a potential 6-7 win team. So to answer your question, I would say so, but I don't know. It feels like they still, and I don't know how much building can be done there, right? I mean, we've seen it in the Big East, and I almost said it's like a year or two away. I don't know what their recruiting looks like, but Schiano's a very solid coach. He's very just fundamentally driven, tough-nosed kind of guy, and that's how his programs are. I wouldn't be shocked if they get to a point where maybe they'll pull off 8 wins every few years, like under him, for however long he's there in the second stint. But yeah, they're a tough physical football team, and they've got. I mean, Aaron Lewis is a really good player who was once a Wolverine for a short period of time. So they've got some guys, man, and this is a solid football team.
I mean, Rutgers. It's sort of like what you talked about with Schiano. Very fundamentally sound. a good defensive team, and that's where you can give a team some issues who might get careless. So Michigan's gonna have to be careful and not give the game away, like they did in the first half against Rutgers, sort of last year, in that 17-14 deficit that they went into halftime with, and then they blew them out 52-17. They relocked back in. That Rutgers team though was not as good as this one. I do think this is Greg Schiano's best team since his first tenure. And so, there's been clear progression and growth with this program, which has impressed me, frankly. I think they play the type of brand of football that you can respect, and starting with fundamentals and building it from the ground up is what he's doing. Like you're talking about, Tanner, I don't know if they can even get the talent there personally, the way the Big Ten's moving, and even location-wise, and, a whole lot of factors with Rutgers. They're just not built to be up there. And, I'll throw them like below the Michigan State tier for sure, right? So I look at Michigan, Ohio State as the tops in the Big Ten, and then below that will be, maybe Michigan State, but Penn State's right up there too, and they're definitely like a third or fourth tier Big Ten team. So getting them to a level that's 8 wins is the occasional every 3 seasons or so 8 wins is what I think they could do, which is impressive alone. So, if they can do that, great, props to them. I think they will give Michigan a good fight, but I also think that Michigan's going to dice them up. And I do. The passing game, I think that's gonna be the difference. I think JJ's going to come out and want to answer some questions after struggling, and Michigan's running game might get slowed down a little bit, but they ran last year. Corum and Edwards both had over 100 yards, pretty efficiently too. So it's hard to say. Their run defense has improved, but Wimsatt, like you talked about, Tanner, I don't think he's going to do too much. They need him to be careful and efficient. And if he can do that, which he hasn't been efficient, but he's been careful this year, he hasn't turned the ball over yet. If he threw 3 picks last year, so if he doesn't throw a pick and he's semi-efficient, Rutgers might hang around in this game a little bit longer than people are expecting.
Yeah,
go
ahead, John.
Go for it. Well, I was just going to ask about specific, now. So obviously we've got a lot with Rutgers, but there is one player I think on their team. I don't think it's the quarterback. I think it's the running back, Kyle Monangai, who, if you look at these numbers, and I understand that the competition that they played against isn't Georgia, okay, but still, with that said, 119 yards per game is legit. I don't care who you're playing. 5 touchdowns. This guy is one thing I've noticed about Schiano is he can get a running back going. And so this is another example of getting a running back going when maybe the quarterback isn't necessarily the best. And that's probably putting it mild. That's probably being nice to Wimsatt by saying he's not the best. So Nelson, what's your take on Kyle Monangai and kind of what you've seen with him?
Yeah, he's 5'9", 210, I think. So he's a smaller guy, but he's like I don't mean mini in the stature wise, but like I think like a miniature Blake Corum and performance and skill. He's very quick. He's shifty. He moves pretty well, similar size, and I think he's sort of a similar style to what UNLV puts out running back wise. They have like 3 guys at UNLV who are all around 5'9", 5'8". But he's not, just a speedster. He's very elusive. So seeing him in his highlight reel looks pretty good. He has pretty good vision. And so Michigan will have to be disciplined or else he could burn you. I think he's going to be definitely in the top half of backs in the conference. I think usage-wise is just going to keep him maybe in the top, 5-6 range just because they're going to lean on him so much and they have to. But he's a good back, and Rutgers will be trying to run the ball because that's their bread and butter. So they're going to try and run the ball, and they're going to try and stop the run, and that will decide the game.
Tanner?
Yeah, I've been kind of thinking about it, and I know I've been somewhat complimentary. I think Michigan's going to come out with its hair on fire and just really take it to Rutgers. I just don't know how much they're going to be able to move the ball. Very similar to a team last year. I mean, look, Gavin Wimsatt hasn't turned the ball over. I think he's completing 51% of his passes, 6.2 yards an attempt. Like, it's not good. Like it's
Right.
it's not good at all. So I don't know. I think Monangai is good, but again, just thinking about this defense and the way that they're playing, like if you can't do both on offense, like you can't run and pass to some extent, good luck. Because I just don't think, like, I think Michigan will keep 4 in the box and stuff the run game and, confuse Wimsatt. I mean, he had 3 picks against Michigan last year. One of those was a touchdown. So, yeah, I don't know where the success is going to come from for them.
Yeah, well, if it's not, I don't think if it's the ground game, it's not coming from anywhere. The one dynamic component or sort of X factor for them offensively is Wimsatt as a runner, and we didn't see a ton of it, but he's capable. And last week he ran for almost 90 yards on like 10 or 11 carries, so he's got the capability. We've seen it. They did use him in some design runs last season against Michigan, and it didn't work out at all. So I don't know, how much of preparation has to go into that. But I think Michigan is sort of like you're saying, is going to stop the run. That's their focus. And then they're going to make Wimsatt make some decisions and throw the ball. And I don't think it's going to work out very well against Michigan's secondary, especially if they're as close to full health as Minner thinks they are.
So when you look at their defense, and this is definitely something that gives me a slight bit more pause. That Rutgers has been. I mean, it's Schiano. We know he's a defensive coach, but 19th ranked in the country. They're looking pretty solid on defense. I do think that Michigan's going to by far be the toughest test because Michigan can test any defense because JJ can throw, he can run. Obviously, you've got 2 extremely good running backs. You've got wide receivers, and especially Roman Wilson, I think, is really taking that next step. So it's going to be tough for any defense to face that, but especially, obviously Rutgers may have to be on the field on defense quite a bit. So that may impact them as well. So what, from a defensive perspective, Tanner, what are you seeing from Rutgers?
Yeah, I think they've got some guys, like I mentioned earlier. Like I really like Aaron Lewis. I think he's a ball player. He's a defensive end who was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school, committed to Michigan, signed with Michigan, and then during COVID ended up transferring back to his home in New Jersey to play for Rutgers. I think he's a ball player. But I don't know. I just don't see a world where Michigan comes out, sloppy and not energized and just kind of lethargic. Like I feel like they're really just going to come out hot, and I just don't. I just think Michigan's going to be able to just overmatch them athletically, and I just don't see a way that Rutgers is able to stay in this game unless there are a ton of turnovers. Like that's the only issue. That's the only thing I can, conceivably see Michigan being in a close game. I just think that they're going to win this game by a few touchdowns. Like I think it's a perfect storm, unfortunately for Rutgers. Like rough game last week offensively for JJ, and some, just Harbaugh coming back, and it's Big Ten play. Like it just feels like the real season is starting on Saturday. I just feel like this is a team that's so mature and they're an older team. Like I have a feeling they're come out ready to go and have some fun, and I think they're going to beat Rutgers pretty handily. So
with that said, okay. So predictions, I got a little scared after my prediction last week and fell about 20 points short. So this time on Buckeye Mike's 30-minute war, I've gone the other direction. He still had it lower than I have it. He had it like 21-10 Michigan or something. So I think it's going to be a little higher, 28-17, 11-point game. Let's go, Tanner. What's your prediction for this?
38-10 Michigan. JJ throws 3 touchdowns, no picks, get a touchdown each for Blake and Dono, and we move on to Nebraska.
Okay, Nelson.
Yeah, I got Michigan 31-10. I do think they give up a couple scores. You're going to be playing 4 quarters this time offensively for Michigan, most likely, or at least 3.5. So I'd be interested to see. I do think they'll be able to put up 31 plus points. I mean, they put up 31 last week and still had those 3 interceptions. So let's say they don't throw 3 picks and maybe there's 1 turnover here or there, because there was also, a couple fumbles for Michigan. Let's say they do turn it over once or twice, but not an interception. I think Michigan's going to dominate, and the run game will get Rutgers maybe an early score, and Michigan will have an answer the rest of the way for Rutgers.
There we go, and we've got some predictions in chat here that are kind of in line with your guys's. We got 41-13 Michigan. We've got 38-17 Michigan. I don't see the Ohio State troll ones yet. I'm waiting for the Rutgers wins. Because I did. I forget which show it was. Maybe it was Big Ten Live on Monday. We had some fun Rutgers wins scores. And I think people like to mess with us a little bit.
Don't they have a pretty big game to worry about themselves? I'd be more worried about Sam Hartman than I would be Michigan Rutgers if I were them, but that's just me.
I would concur. Joining us to talk Rutgers, and we thank him for taking some time out of his busy schedule, but we do have our special guest joining us, Kristian Dyer. Thank you so much, Kristian, for coming on to talk Rutgers.
Hey, everybody. You guys lost a lot of bets. I made it on today, so.
Hey. No, I'm glad you could make it, man. I really appreciate it. So we've been talking about Rutgers a little bit here, and obviously to hear from RutgersWire is always, it's great. Try to follow your work as much as I can, and so I wanted to try to get you on for something at some point. Why not right before Michigan plays you? So I'll ask you the same question I asked the panelists, and then feel free to break down Rutgers however you want. But do you think this could be Schiano's best team in his second tenure?
Yeah, great question. And first off, thank you all for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity. I do want to apologize. I mean, first off, it looks like I'm in the basement of Deer Hunter right now. It's a very blurry sort of dated look, and everyone there looks very crisp, very clean cut. So I apologize for the settings right now. But to go into our question, to talk a little football, right? That's why we're here. I do think that this is probably the best of Greg Schiano 2.0. It's a balanced team. It's a team through 3 games that we saw play complementary football. When you looked at this team through the previous 3 iterations, you kind of throw out that COVID year of 2020, right? That's kind of, I think everything was a little wonky. That was the year of the epic multiple overtime games between Rutgers and Michigan. Probably doesn't happen the next year if you put those 2 teams together, similar talent. But at the end of the day, I think you're looking at the fact that this is a defense that's probably top 5 in the Big Ten this year. It's 7th in the nation currently in scoring defense. So I think that's certainly a positive from a Rutgers perspective, having given up 30 points in 3 games to 2 Power 5 opponents. And for the first time since 2015, maybe 2014, Rutgers actually has a pulse on offense. And that's been a real positive development. Now, enough to go into the big house against the number 2 team in the nation on Saturday and pull off the unthinkable? Probably not. But at the end of the day, I think that there is kind of that upward trajectory for Rutgers.
What's the general thought with Wimsatt? I'm trying to see where he is developmentally, and it's hard to read early this season. And he hasn't played great. They haven't asked him to do that much. And they didn't ask him to do that much last year. What's the feeling on him, his development, what they're going to ask him to do Saturday?
Yeah, I think there's a difference between playing great, which is a very Michigan question, right? Michigan kind of looks and expects greatness from their quarterbacks, and greatness really from all positions. I think what Rutgers is hoping for is something functional. 54% completion percentage doesn't jump off the page at you. But when you consider that Wimsatt last year as a spot starter was throwing 44%, it's a rather significant uptick, right? Really, at the end of the day, it's about managing the offense, which was kind of Schiano Schiano 1.0. If you think about the offense from 2006, when Rutgers was a ranked team and kind of in that top 10, top 12, top 15 discussion, they had that epic upset over Louisville on Thursday night. It was not a barn burner offense. Greg Schiano's probably only had one offense that you would really consider to be a barn burner offense, and that was in 2008 when Rutgers was the only college football team in college football history to have 2,000-yard receivers and a 1,000-yard rusher. And I'm going to take that back. That was 2007. That wasn't 2008. So most of the time it's about ball control, limiting turnovers, and playing complementary football. So I think Gavin Wimsatt right now, what you saw on him from Saturday for Rutgers was not a great day throwing the ball, 7 of 16 for, I think, 46 yards, a passing touchdown, ran the ball for 87 yards. I think it was about a dozen carries or so, give or take a couple, 0 turnovers. He's had 0 fumbles, 0 interceptions. If you put me up against the wall and ask me if that's 3:30 in the afternoon Eastern time on Saturday, if that's still the case, I'd say probably not with some of the pieces that Michigan has, but it's been a good start. And I think if Rutgers is going to be bowl eligible, it's going to be not turning the ball over against the teams like Northwestern, like the teams against Virginia Tech. And then it's going to be the Michigan States and the Indianas and the Marylands, where you're hoping from a Rutgers perspective that Gavin Wimsatt's running the offense. Yeah, he's, isn't being asked to do a whole lot with the ground game that they have right now. He does have a cannon of an arm, however, former 4-star recruit, had some pretty big offers. So the potential's there. But right now, this is really his first season as a starter. And I think the idea is just manage the offense, limit mistakes, set it up so that, they can win the close games.
And we do have a Rutgers fan in chat right now, Keep Choppin'. And Keep Choppin' has said if Rutgers can run the ball, they will be the top rushing team in the Big Ten. And that is that's ambitious, but, I will say Monangai is looking like just these stats really pop off. I mean, I don't care if you're playing directional U in wherever. To go 119 yards per game is legit, and he looks like an impact player. And so, what's your take on him and his development?
Yeah, Kyle Monangai is really interesting. Only one Power 5 offer coming out from Don Bosco Prep, which has been a feeder program for a lot of Big Ten teams. You've had a couple Don Bosco players come through the ranks and end up in Ann Arbor over the years. And he was someone who was really under the radar despite playing for a top 25 national team. Was kind of bought into Greg Schiano 2.0 very early. He was either the first or the second commitment of that class when Schiano came back. And he's just a hard-running guy, very physical, is going to be reminiscent of Ray Rice. For those of you who remember Ray Rice from the Rutgers area, very confident between the tackles. But what's really stood out this year is his ability to bounce outside and to make some plays. He showcased kind of that second-level speed. And the reason why I'm saying he was able to showcase that level is last year the offensive line didn't even let the running backs get to the second level. Case in point, you go back 2 years ago, Isaiah Pacheco, who's probably now a top 12 running back in the NFL, was a 7th-round pick because his film was so bad coming out of Rutgers. And that was because the offensive line play was pretty bad. And this is the best offensive line they've had since 2014, which was their first year in the Big Ten. When they went to a bowl game, they beat North Carolina. They beat Michigan that year as well. We won't talk too much about that game. We're going to call that an outlier for the time being, right? But it was a great football game. And but I think Kyle Monangai is kind of that perfect running back. He can do a lot of things out of the backfield, and he is one of the best blocking running backs, not just in the Big Ten, but in all of college football. He put a crack on in the Northwestern game. I think the Northwestern linebacker, his head must still be ringing because it was absolutely tremendous. Brian Baldinger singled it out. So he's a great running back. He plays with a chip on his shoulder. Also a high character kid, great in the classroom as well.
I will say, to your credit, also, there was another game, and I try to just forget 2020 existed most of the time, but I will say if it wasn't for Cade McNamara just playing like really getting Michigan back in that. I mean, like you guys could have caused Harbaugh to get fired. So I mean, it was very close. Like,
I mean, there was a lot of Rutgers fans rooting for that, and also Paul Feinbaum was a big Rutgers fan in that game. So,
well, if Rutgers had won that game, maybe he wouldn't look like an idiot the last 2 years on ESPN and the week of Thanksgiving.
To his credit, Feinbaum has walked back on that quite a bit. To his credit.
I mean, he did say, Kristian, I don't know how much you keep up with. I don't like the dude, but one of the comments he said was that Jim Harbaugh has something inside of his brain that he cannot beat his rivals right before 2021 Ohio State. So just a weird cat, just an interesting cat in my opinion. So thank God for Cade McNamara, I guess. But the 2014 game was a great game, and the last year of the Brady Hoke era. So.
And so the other thing I wanted to get,
thank you. Yes, thank you.
I did want to get your take on the defense. Obviously, we know Schiano's a defensive coach, and just the fact that the defense is ranked so high is definitely notable. What's your take on the defensive personnel and kind of who you expect to maybe break out in this game continually, or what's your take?
Yeah, it was a big second half against Virginia Tech for Aaron Lewis, who's someone you're all going to be familiar with, right? He was a former 3/4-star from New Jersey, transfer portal kid, came back. He's got great length. He's put on some good size, huge personality, by the way. I mean, Aaron Lewis, just Big Ten media days. Go back and watch some of the clips from him. He's got a future in broadcasting when it's all said and done. I think there's a very good shot. He's a day 2 pick out of Rutgers, which would be the highest NFL draft pick for Rutgers since Schiano's returned. But he's definitely someone who I think if Rutgers is going to stay in this game and make it a game and challenge Michigan, he's going to have a big day. He had a very big second half. It was kind of the first time all season where he's put it all together. He's been facing a lot of double teams this year, so it's going to be interesting to see what he can do against Michigan, and if there's a little bit of a chip on his shoulder as well to go back up to the big house and play up there. But to me, it's going to be the interior of the defensive line is really going to be what's going to be the challenge. Isaiah Iton's a kid they got from Ole Miss out of the transfer portal, as well as Renee Conga are going to be 2 players who I think if Rutgers is able to do a good job, stay consistent in their gap assignments, you got to try to make Blake Corum as one-dimensional as possible, and that's a very, very tall task to do. The secondary is a solid one. Flip Dixon's a player that a lot of people around the Big Ten will be familiar with. He's a transfer from Minnesota. He has been an absolute revelation. He was sort of special packages that Minnesota was expected to start this year with the Golden Gophers. They had a deep back end last year, and he has been just absolutely tremendous to me. He's got 2 years of eligibility left. If he comes out, he's a day 3 pick this year. He's put up some great film, had an interception last week. The linebackers are probably the strength of this team as well. Tyreen Powell is a player. He had a big game against Michigan last year. And they're also returning Mo Toure, who's been fantastic, and Deion Jennings as well, who's going to be an NFL draft pick. This is his last year at Rutgers, barring anything unforeseen. But that is a very, very strong and deep group as well. So is it going to be easy to stop Michigan on Saturday? No. You see the points, 30-plus points in 3 straight games. But I do think Michigan's going to be tested a little bit more in this game than they have been. This is a good ramp-up test game, I think, measuring stick game for Michigan. In many, many ways, because I'm assuming it's going to be a little bit of a higher quality if Rutgers can limit the mistakes. I think it's going to be a game where we're going to find out a lot about these 2 teams by 2:30, 3:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah, and Kristian, you've I'm sure you've been looking at Michigan and the personnel. You probably know that Will Johnson and Rob Moore have been kept out. Will Johnson, I think, played like a little bit, but they've been keeping them out as kind of questionable, but it's probably safe to assume they're both going to be back. So with that said, I mean, what is that kind of, when you're kind of evaluating Rutgers' chances in the game, what do you look at from the Michigan side? Like, what would need to be the case for Rutgers to win, and kind of who do you want to neutralize?
Yeah, I'm going to answer it by not answering it, and the reason why I'm going to do that is because if Jim Harbaugh had been suspended for 4 games, I'm not sure it fundamentally changes this game on paper a whole lot. You know, things can happen in games, mistakes can happen, obviously, but this is a Michigan team that, to me, is the deepest team in the Big Ten by far. You know, and I think player for player, it's the best team in the Big Ten. I, for the life of me, can't figure out, and this is with all due respect, why Ohio State's getting all the buzz they're getting. With the pieces that are in place back in Ann Arbor. And I'm not just saying that because I'm on a Michigan show. I'm saying that from the bottom of my heart. When you look at the returning pieces under center, in the backfield, at wide receiver, is probably the only place where you could say Ohio State offensively would have an edge, if not a significant edge. But you got to get the ball to those guys, right, on the outside. And I think that's where Ohio State's struggling this year. So, you know, Johnson and Moore not coming, potentially not being available on Saturday. Jim Harbaugh, you know, if he was suspended for the 4 games like we all thought he was going to be, would be suspended for this game. I still think Michigan just kind of rolls along and goes along. There's a mindset, there's a mentality, there's a mission. I think the worst thing to happen to Rutgers this year is Michigan losing in the college football playoff last year, right? This is a hungry team. This is a team on the mission. And, you know, so I think that, well, I think this has the potential to be a closer game and the closest out of the first 3 games. I don't think it's a 31-point spread like we saw from Vegas at the beginning of the week. But if Rutgers is able to run the ball, consistently get first downs, keep in mind Rutgers did have a halftime lead last year at SHI Stadium. Maybe not a deserved halftime lead, right? But it was a halftime lead. Special teams play made the difference. You know, I think this has the potential maybe not to be what you saw in Ann Arbor 2 years ago when Rutgers was unfortunate not to come away with the upset. But I think that this could be a good test for Michigan and get them primed up for week 5.
There you go. So watch this space. I mean, I'm excited for this game. It's a Big Ten opponent. So we're going to be following it, and don't forget to check us out as well on Saturday's Michigan post game live after the game is over with myself and Dre Artis. So we'll be breaking it down. But Kristian, you know, if people want to continue to follow your work, obviously we appreciate you being on. But if people want to follow you further, just let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing probably a lot of you probably follow Isaiah Hole from Wolverines Wire. Well, I'm the compatriot over here. Isaiah's been a great guy and really helped me a lot when I kind of joined the network here. And it's been exciting. So I'm over at RutgersWire.usatoday.com. We're part of the USA Today Sports Media Group network. You know, I know everyone's probably following Isaiah already, but, you know, he's always got some interesting takes out there on social media too. Not afraid to be bold. I'm not quite as brash.
It's very true. Yeah, he is you know, he gives his takes. He doesn't apologize for being bold. You know, sometimes. So that's,
you know what, in journalism where a lot of people curry favor, I covered the NFL for a decade before this. A lot of people curry favor. A lot of people, you know, try to write things. Just he believes everything he writes, and I give him a lot of credit for that. He covers the team very well. He's well sourced. You know, he's been absolutely fantastic to me.
Well, Kristian, thank you for being on. We'll let you go. I know that you've been running around, but we appreciate you carving out some time for giving us the Rutgers take.
No, I appreciate your patience and everything. And my last word of advice is don't have kids until you're later in life, guys, if you haven't started that process, because they'll drive you to an early grave. I used to be a beautiful man. I know that's a shock, right? I used to be a beautiful man. I used to be thin. I didn't used to like go hide in the closet and eat donuts so my wife wouldn't see me stress eating all day. But man, having a 4-year-old exhausts you. And so I appreciate it. I was supposed to be on before. Hopefully I'll be on again sometime. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun and good luck this weekend. And let's just hope for a good game, right? A good game.
Well,
Absolutely.
Kristian, real quick, I got to share with you. I'm recently married. We got married November 5th last year during the Rutgers game. So I will definitely heed your advice from a Rutgers man to a Michigan man. Just seems like the universe is trying to tell me something. Maybe, take some time, enjoy marriage.
Take some time.
Before
When you go on the football field, always wear your helmet.
Touche, point taken.
Think about that one a little bit.
All right, Kristian,
thanks so much, Kristian.
Appreciate you stopping by.
Take care, guys. Have a great day. Appreciate you all.
Right.
Yeah, appreciate
Bye
it.
now.
What a guy.
All right.
What a guy.
That was a wild quote right there.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm going to go laugh after the
advice.
show. I'm going to go laugh for 10 minutes. That was great.
I'll take the advice, man. All right. Well, let's go with Nelson next. Final thought for you, for everybody, and where can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. I've mentioned it, but Michigan's going to roll Rutgers. I think they're going to win 31-10. Look for them to continue to play well. And then you can find me on the Maize and Blue Review at michigan.rivals.com, on our socials. You can find me on Twitter at my Twitter @ there. But, honestly, I think the one thing I got coming out that I want you guys to take a look at, if you have the time, make the time. I got my power rankings. I'm releasing that tomorrow morning. So keep an eye out for that. I'll have a video going out with that. And we're going to break down exactly where I have everybody following the action of week 3 going into week 4. But thank you for having me, John. Good to see you, Tanner. I'll be back with you guys another time.
Go Blue, Nelson.
Go Blue.
And Tanner, you're up for final thought, and where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Tanner Wu-Tang. See our links there, Blue by 90. Tailgating again at Chrysler Center last weekend. I was on the Blackstone Griddle, maybe had a few too many beverages. I do remember a couple times getting popped with hot grease from the burgers. Yeah, man, final thoughts. Ready for the weekend. It's Wednesday. It's hump day. A couple more days of work. Ready for the weekend. Ready for some more football, man. And my fantasy team's 1-1, John. We're back to 500. So we're coming along. I got smoked week 1, week 2. We're coming back. Lions are coming back this weekend. Michigan rolls. That's all I got for you, buddy.
Appreciate it, man. Tanner, always great to see you.
Likewise, buddy. You have a go, man. Take care, guys.
Go Blue.
Go Blue.
Okay, a couple of last comments. Thank you, Jason. Always great to have you here. We have a 66-0 prediction. So, wow, that's very bold. The Rod Farva commenting, doing a little bit of a soliloquy on CJ Stroud. So that's going on in the chat right now. Interesting commentary. And yes, all of those things were said, and I'm just going to leave it there. You got a Buckeye right there talking about it. I don't need to say anything else. Next up on our must-see TV block here at the Voice of College Football. We're churning out content all the time for you guys. Right now, the Florida State show is happening. So I'm going to go ahead and put the link in the chat. We strongly ask everybody to, at the very least, go over there and say, John sent you. So I'm just going to go ahead and put Florida State Live happening now. So there's that. So go over and support Florida State. Give them a like if you haven't. 7 o'clock will be Miami Live, 7 Eastern. 8 p.m. Eastern, Mark Rogers, Voice of College Football, is going to be doing a Notre Dame OSU preview. West Virginia is also at 8. And then the Pac-12 Chat Show Live is at 10:30 p.m. Eastern. So we have content for you all night long. If you like your college football, keep it at the Voice of College Football. And for everybody here, I want to thank you all for coming on. And until next time, this is John Diadamo saying, go Blue. See you around.